Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to RNA number 2 for 602 this semester. You may see my lovely cat Layla decide to hop up here and introduce herself during the video. But what I want to do is I want to walk through this week's readings and kind of give a synopsis of what I saw and kind of put it into my own perspective and kind of go from there. So, characteristics of a college student and the almanac portion that we had to read. Kind of what I noticed here, students aren't the same as they used to be when it comes to college. Now, are they representative of what it should be? That could be debated, most likely not. But there is a shift in the college landscape. I also noticed in these two things, there had been an overall growth in enrollment. And I remember when I was in housing, we actually were seeing a decline towards the 2020 or 2019 timeframe. And I kind of wonder how this has all changed with COVID-19. So I know these reports and the articles were kind of written at one point in time, but it's very fascinating to me how this will all change. If I was making projections, my assumptions would be is that your minority students or non-traditional students are probably going to see a decline dramatically in college over the next 2 to 3 years, just for the happenings of the economy locally. College, for some, tends to be, when the economy goes bad, people more enroll in college. It's kind of that common thing you hear from people from the research. I don't know how much that really stands. I would have expected enrollment to be record high if that was the case during COVID-19, but some people had to go take different jobs. Some of their jobs are no longer what they were, and I think it kind of will play some little bit of strangeness that goes along here. The growth of college students and kind of the differences, it all reminded me of an economic growth thing that we used to talk about in my econ classes. So essentially what it was is the more centerized, the longer somebody's been around a economy, or in this case a student population, the less change you're going to see in year to year from that, because there's a longevity of, it's kind of saturated at that point. When you start seeing individual pockets, so say China, India back in the day, that would pop up in growth, you kind of see the same things with students in non-traditional settings or minority students. They're seeing these huge growths because there weren't that many to begin with. Once they start getting to the population of kind of a status quo, then I'll be interested to see how it changes. It made me think of those equations I used to do, delta over delta, change over change, and how that kind of made everything play out. In terms of these articles and the article in the almanac, nothing really surprised me. I think this might be happening because I sit in classrooms with students. I've known recruitment priorities for the universities. I've been studying this for quite some time now. None of this was really surprising to me, but I could see if someone was just starting in this program that it would be kind of a surprise. I'm a white male who finished school from a rural community in the middle upper class income level. I should be in college according to what everything else in the past has said. But if I sit in a classroom now, I'm probably, and actually in my sales or my social media and marketing classes, we're primarily female. I'm starting to see students of color, and you're starting to have some different plays in the classroom, and I'm starting to notice it. And I think that if I'm noticing it in the middle of Muncie, Indiana, in the middle of Indiana, then it's probably happening at a greater pace, specifically on the coasts, and you're going to see that trickle through across. Qualitative health research article. I could tell you right away, this is funny because I never thought I'd be able to tell you this, but first things first, this article was written by a qualitative researcher, if there ever was an article written by a qualitative researcher. I just had to laugh because I could tell by the way it was written. And it felt like you were reading a fiction novel. This was funny because I had written 2 vignettes before reading this article, and I was trying to get ahead because the comp process was coming up, and I was working on a whole bunch of different things all at one time, trying to compile everything. So when I read this, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should redo kind of how I'm doing my vignettes. I was writing sort of an interview account of myself of what happened. Felt like I should put some more feeling and detail in there. And I think with the third vignette that I submitted before this RNA, I think that you can kind of see a little shift in how I was doing things. More story-esque. You're going to hear a little bit more about my living environments and a little bit more detail than what I was doing before. That was pretty much what I felt about that article. It was cool to see an example of what was going on, but I'll tell you also I kind of lost interest midway through. It was very hard to follow the story. There was a story there, but it was hard for me. Maybe I'm just not the biggest reader of these styles, but it was a different way to look at the research. Teaching the students we have, not the students we wish we had. I think this comment was going to reign true forever. Today's college students are the most overburdened and undersupported in American history. I think that these kinds of articles are always wake-up calls for me. I haven't experienced money problems. My wife really didn't either. I look at what we have back for Danny at this point in time, and he's not going to have any problems going to college if he chooses to go to Ball State or someplace else. I have gone kind of with the notion, with my full ride in, Lindsay took, I think, a $10,000 loan out for all of college. So I can't imagine the problems that occur, specifically when you got to take like student loans out to help pay your parents' debt down. My parents, they kind of can do whatever they want. Same with my in-laws. Just not really a problem I've experienced. So it made me kind of go, whoa, that's interesting. I had to, as we went through the article, it was strange. I was confused a little bit about how my professor came into this. There was just really a strange finish to this article. If a student came to me and asked for or had problems, I'd help them. I mean, that's just who I am, and I can't imagine other faculty members not doing that. But I guess it happens. I've had some students that have had issues, couldn't afford a book. I had one who broke their arm. It was very strange. Dominant hand, and I'm having them write a whole bunch in the class. Different things that have popped up, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, this has really changed the perspective of what I'm looking at. But I've tried to help them in any way possible. So it's very strange, and it kind of disappoints me that there are people out there who wouldn't be willing to work with the students. And then I wondered if I need to rethink some of my classes to account for the craziness that happens. No matter what I have done when I've adapted a class, I seem to always look back and go, well, I could probably do this a little different. I think that's just part of the teaching side of things, but we'll see. I look at my classes each semester, and I try to be as understanding and flexible as possible, specifically during this time. But I'm hoping that I continue that as I go through my career as a faculty member. The last one, autoethnography. When I started reading this, I started wondering if my story was actually worth being written about. I've always felt like a strange person. And as I write my vignettes, or when I think about my life and what I do and how I've done it, I am, in my mind, not typical to what a normal person from my area and my realm of reference would be. I also never really thought it'd be useful knowledge to someone. But I mean, you look at myself, I was high school, kind of not superstar, but I was really great there. College came easy. I continued to do stuff. I've been able to take jobs and move to be home with my family more and be closer to home. I mean, it's a Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and I have been writing and editing comps today and living the life that was kind of pretty awesome, that if you would have told me when I graduated I'd be doing, I'd be thought you're nuts. Just not the same. And I wonder if that story could provide some useful knowledge. I'll disagree with the Salzman comment. What better way to create knowledge than to look at oneself through one's lens? Only myself, can understand why the hell I do things. My wife gets a pretty good idea, but she still has her perspective on what's going on. It's just kind of interesting to me. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge I have learned. Never would have thought it was valuable to someone, but I have learned it. A piece that kind of stuck out to me, I said, why the hell do I care if people say my research isn't the best? Isn't it up to my understanding and knowledge to discern the meaning of the research? So this kind of got me thinking, strangely enough, going through the comps process and knowing that I'll have my dissertation and having to defend it later on. I am working through my set of skills, my set of perspectives, my experiences, all of that. So I may think research is really awesome, and I think that Dr. Latch has been great with it. I think my other people on the committee have been great. I think that there's an interest there, but I mean, when we get right down to it, if I find the stuff useful and I'm adding to the body of knowledge, does it really matter what everybody else thinks as long as my process is supported and it's in the correct format and I'm actually hitting what I'm supposed to be doing? Just kind of something I wondered about. Um, I also wondered if this just brought a lot of questions to my head. If my story of me being a small town guy, going and working in the big city and coming back out, and my experiences through that could be a story or even a study. I think that'd be kind of interesting on why I decided what I was doing and how that has impacted my life. I kind of made a comment that said autoethnography is inception at its finest. It's thinking about through you, can't wake up from the dreams, that kind of thing. I thought it was kind of cool. Probably if I would have known about this style of research in depth, I may have considered it when I was looking at dissertation proposals or different studies. Probably would have been hesitant, but still would have been up there as a possibility. I can think of, like, all this did was it made me think of different studies. I mean, I think there's a cultural phenomenon that happens just across the street from me at the golf course. There's groups of guys that go out there and play on a regular basis, and there's a culture that's kind of designed around that, and it's very interesting to me. Same like a fraternal organization, local Elks Lodge. There's a whole different running of how all that stuff happens, and looking at how COVID impacted it and how they adapted is really fascinating to me. I saw lived experiences as kind of one of the brackets when I was working on ID 705 over this fall. This was brought into my study. So it was the lived experiences of students and administrators during COVID-19. It's really fascinating to me that I hadn't caught on that I was semi-doing this, but more the ethnography route. It's just kind of interesting to me. I have another question that brought up: is my life really that interesting, and to whom is it that interesting? I find that I'm a very simple person. Is that really interesting to people? What could they learn from me? Another thing that popped in my head is I can tell you from my experiences that my life has been greatly changed by a few major events that have happened, particularly my mom and my brother both having strokes. I have now switched to a lifestyle of live it now, don't try to wait for something you want to do 20 years from now, figure out how to do it now. I bet there's some sort of study that could be there. There could be some research about how critical events, medical events, can impact someone's perspective, specifically if it's not even actually happening to them, but to close relatives. I mentioned it was really cool. I thought autoethnography was a cool field. Wish I would have learned a little about it a little earlier. Kind of how I took these classes. I feel like everything's backwards. I took all classes and I finished up with 601 and 602. It's kind of a moment for me, kind of learning some things. I'm like, oh, piecing this together. I thought it was interesting to talk about the interactions with others, how you interacted with another person, and how that person interacted with you is a really good piece of data that can be looked at. The stories are the research. The implications are. I found this cool as well. And overall, I thought these readings were very interesting, and I learned a lot from this. And I hope you've learned a lot from my video, maybe my ramblings. This should probably be called Random Notes, something or another for RNA. But that's kind of my story for this week, and I hope you've had a good day.